Matilda?
Maybe she's muted.
Nope, we're good. There we go.
Okay, welcome to today's webinar on resources for the 2020 census. Okay. We're so thankful for all of you who could choose to participate in today's webinar. My name is Matilda Gragg, and I'm an AmeriCorps VISTA, serving as the Schuyler Center for Analysis and Advocacy's research coordinator. Today we will discuss logistics of the census, why it's crucial that all children get counted, and we will be providing resources and ideas to ensure a complete count. At the end of the webinar, we will be answering questions from all of you participating today. The Schuyler Center is happy to work with our partners over at the Council on Children and Families. I'm going to turn it over to CCF's New York Kids Count Director, Cate Bohn.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited about this webinar. We're going to be talking about the census. It is the largest peacetime mobilization in the United States. It happens every 10 years, and it is a constitutional requirement that each of us in the country answer the census questions. The data from the census is used to allocate funding for many federal programs, which we'll go over today, that affect children and families and New York State. The census also affects reliable planning and funding at the state level and for school districts, special education programs. The census also is how we derive our political representation, redistricting, and districts for the 435 House of Representatives seats, our state assembly and senate, counties, and school boards. It also determines how many seats in the House of Representatives each state gets. And right now, based on our population loss in New York State, we are people are betting that we will lose 2 seats, but we're hoping that we will only lose 1, or perhaps none. Also, the infrastructure and the employment and training, vocational rehabilitation grants, and other public transit, bridge and tunnels, all sorts of things that the census money goes for. We're here today to talk about children and families, and children have been historically undercounted since the 1980s. It has been something that we can see in the data. Demographers have documented the undercount, a birth to 5 of young children, and that's important that we focus on that right now in New York State so that we count all of the children in our 0 to 5 age group, and to talk about some of the reasons why this is a problem for New York. So it affects New York substantially more than other states. Only 1 state has a higher percentage of children living in census tracts that had a lower male response rate in 2010 for the census, and only 2 states have actual higher counts of children, Texas and California. So we're looking at children who live in neighborhood census tracts where they did not return the form last census in 2010. And they are predominantly in low-income areas in cities such as Utica, New York City, and Buffalo. And Bill O'Hare's research shows us that New York City has more children under 5 in low-responding census tracts than any other city in the country. And 78% of Buffalo's children under the age of 5 live in low-responding census tracts, the 4th highest of all cities in the country. So this suggests that there are more young people being missed in New York State than in other states. And we also have pockets of all of folks who have never responded to the census in every community. So we are hoping that we can ask you to help us count these children. and some of the reasons that children have been undercounted when research have gone out into the community and looked at some of the reasons and looked at some of the confusion. It speaks to families that are moving frequently, so parents with perhaps unstable incomes and unstable housing, where families where English is not the same language, children who live with grandparents, and New York is in the top 20 states of the percentage of grandparents taking care of grandchildren. So it's very important that we reach out to grandparents and let them know that they should definitely put their grandchildren on the census form. Children who live with non-families in foster care, we're hoping to get a Dear Provider letter out to some of the child welfare world, but certainly through webinars and talking with all of you, we would like you to get the word out to foster care families. Multi-generational families, depends on maybe who gets the form, who's looking at the information. Large households, splitting time between two households, younger parents, not quite sure about it all, and we're trying to cut through some of this confusion and misunderstanding about the census. So looking at why and how counting children is so important and how this money is so important to our communities. So I'm going to turn it over to Matilda to talk about how you can work with families.
So your role includes helping families understand why it's crucial that their children are counted in the census. You can work with families to make sure that everyone residing in the house is counted, and you can also share your resources that will educate and guide families through filling out the census, which Cate will be going over in a bit. There are numerous groups, organizations, and agencies reaching out to parents and families to ensure that all kids are counted and families have the appropriate resources to make sure that happens. One example of this widespread effort is the American Academy of Pediatrics. AAP is encouraging pediatrics to be a source to families for information and education on the 2020 census. Pediatricians are encouraged to ask parents if they had filled out the census form for all of their children, starting at the newborn visit. They are also handing out educational resources, such as fact sheets for parents and coloring pages for children. Pediatricians are asked to be sensitive to immigrants' fears and concerns of being counted in the census, and to reach out to historically undercounted poor, urban, and minority communities that they may work in.
All right, these are some of the resources that the Council has created, the Council on Children and Families, for the census. We have a poster starting at the left, a poster that talks about the process, about who should be counted, when the count begins, how do we get counted, and why do we want to get counted. So this poster is available in English and Spanish. You can download it from the Council's website. We have a coloring sheet with a letter to parents on the back. This can be used in childcare settings, in pre-kindergarten classes, kindergarten classes, to be sent home with the children. And so the parents hopefully would read this from the backpack. The resource on the right are county fact sheets related to the census. So they have child well-being data that comes and uses the census data, as well as the amount of money that's being spent in that county. So just to go over the amounts or the funding streams for children. So we have healthcare, of course, Medicaid, Title IX, Child Health Plus, Community Health Centers, Veterans Health Care. We have education, Title I grants to school districts, National School Lunch Program, Special Education, Head Start, Early Head Start, and the Child Care Development Fund. Those are some of the ways that children are impacted Also, we have housing being impacted with the McKinney-Vento Act, runaway and homeless youth, Section 8 vouchers, and choice. So there's a lot of different programs, and of course for all of us who drive and commute to our jobs, bridge and road maintenance, the pothole season is coming up, so it'd be nice to have all of that money here in New York to take care of that. There are some other resources. NALEO is a national organization bringing together Latino elected officials. So they have a lot of bilingual English and Spanish resources. So this is another colorful resource for children and families, and making sure that they're able to read in a language that is comfortable for them. They also have a hotline for their communities, for elected officials to ask questions, for community members to call in. And so again, this talks about what, who, when, and how, very important. The next one is from New Jersey, Kids Count, Advocates for New Jersey's Children. And this talks about all of the different scenarios that I mentioned about what are the confusion and maybe not trusting the government, not understanding why the government needs to know about where young children are. So it gets to some of those scenarios and offers some responses that you and your staff might be able to sift through and work into your conversations with parents. The next 2 pages have resources from different organizations and also links. So we're going to let you look through these after the webinar. And we wanted to highlight the Sesame Street workshop because they are known to one and all. And the count on Sesame Street is excited about the census. So this is a wonderful and beautiful and amazing resource for all of us to use as we talk with children and families. And I think there are some social media dates that we also wanted you to be aware of. Oh, more toolkits. These are specific. So just take your time to go through these. There's a lot out there. There's a lot that people have already created. There's a lot that people have already been questioned or concerned about. So there's lots of resources out there for you. All right, so these are some ideas. These were, of course, brainstormed before the coronavirus hit us in New York State. So I do have a way to change or revise some outreach and education with the coronavirus response in our heads. So certainly we were hoping that you would hold an event and educate your parents and children, or have a night where they could use your computers to fill out the form, put some posters up, send newsletters out. Certainly we want all sorts of handouts going home to parents and families. There are other ways. Instead of having an event, perhaps you could do a phone bank or texting. If your school or agency has a texting app with parents, certainly we'd like you to do that. If you wanted to ensure that you had posters and flyers in all of your neighborhood community centers, grocery stores, you can drop off literature and see how people might be able to pick it up when they are in that neighborhood resource as well. So these are some ideas, and we also have social media information going on in March and April also. I believe that March 18th is Kids Count Day, so we want you to use the hashtag #CountAllKids, and then we have another day where we want to, every child counts. So we want you to be involved in that if you are on social media, as well as if you have any questions that you've been thinking about, anything else you might want to know about. I believe Bridget and Matilda have a survey for you.
Yep, so we just have a quick survey to see if there's some additional information anybody might like that we can work to get out over the next few weeks. So you should see, yeah, survey there. If you just want to take that quickly. And then we can take some questions if anybody has questions. I will point out that we're going to post the slides to the website. And if you go to the Count All Kids link, you will find a sign up there for the social media campaigns that Cate mentioned. And so that link will be available to you on the slides, or you can just go to Count All Kids website. All right. So I'm going to ask, should be a question and answer pod open. If anybody has any questions. Okay, so we do have a question. Is the March 18th different from what is due on April 1st?
Yes, March 18th would be social media only from your private phone or desktop, where you would log on to your agency social media and tweet or post on Facebook, Instagram, or Snapchat a message about counting all kids, remembering and reminding parents to count all kids, to let your community, your followers know that the census is coming and that your agency has information, that you are a trusted messenger. So your message would be, you know, the census is coming. It impacts the services in our community. It impacts our political representation. Whatever the message that you think is best, there are some in these resources that might work for you. And then the hashtag Count All Kids, and that would be something that you would do on March 18th. April 1st is the official calendar day that the census starts. It's called Census Day 2020. It will also have a huge social media presence, I believe, but it is when people can start to respond to the online form. It's definitely going to be advertising from the census, the U.S. Census Bureau, part of the federal government, on TV and radio. That is the official start of the census for 2020.
Cate, we have two questions regarding the best way to explain to immigrants how the census will help them and not hurt them. And then another one about how do we help immigrants trust the government with this information. Do you feel comfortable handling that, or should we?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
There's lots of resources. You are not the first people to be concerned about this. We have been agonizing over immigrants and refugees for the past year about how to reach out to them, how to reassure them. Certainly New York is an immigrant-friendly state. We have a strong Office of New Americans with welcome centers all over the state. They have translators and interpreters. They have legal resources for immigrants. In New York State, we have tried to get a lot of people in the naturalization pipeline to become citizens. So we are certainly very friendly with immigrants in New York State. So that is true. There have also been myths and rumors and truth about ICE coming into New York City, and upstate in different areas. And we have had a strong response also to those raids and to those, to the presence in our court buildings and county jails, and also on employer property. So we've definitely taken steps to let them know that we are supporting immigrants and supporting migrant workers, and we also want new immigrants to become citizens. It is definitely a concern and an issue, and I would say valid, truly legit. And so your relationship with your clients who may be immigrants, the parents of children who may be immigrants, and if there's a way to convey this information to them in a way that feels comfortable to you, that you're trusting this information and that the families are trusting you. There are strong privacy and confidentiality rules and regulations about the census data. It does not go to landlords. It does not go to the county, local, town, etc. It does not go to the employer. All of this information is confidential, and it is kept for 75 years at the Census Bureau. The Census Bureau employees cannot share this data under penalty of 5 years in jail and a $250,000 fine. That has not had to come to pass at this time, and all of the census workers and Census Bureau employees, that is a lifetime ban. They cannot talk about this after they leave their job. And if they go into a different office in their state, they don't see any paper. It's all very confidential. And we need to believe that, we need to trust that based on our own experience. So I understand that. But that has been true for every census so far. And so we are trusting those census employees. For the Census Bureau as part of the federal government to share any data with any other part of government would take an act of Congress. So the Senate and the House of Representatives would need to agree and pass a law that would say that would happen. I think we're pretty safe there also. And that's my snark of the day. So that's how I would answer that question. It is very serious situation, and hopefully in New York, we have made relationships with new immigrants and immigrants to show them that the census form would not hurt them.
If anybody else has any more questions, now's the time.
Matilda and Bridget, I should also mention that NALEO and many Asian American national resources and Arab American resources have lots of flyers. And so some of the links that you posted will have flyers and talking points for the folks on the webinar about immigrants and how to have that conversation.
Yeah, and I would say that the New York Counts 2020 website would be a good place to go to look for materials as well as the Count Our Kids and the 2020 Census federal website has materials as well. So there are places in this on these links where people can go for that information. Okay, so if there's no more questions, we'll end today's webinar. We will post the slides and the webinar on the Schuyler Center website this afternoon, which is www.sccaany.org. And if you have any questions, you can contact us through the website. Thank you very much.
Thank you.